The emergency session of the United Nations had been called for 6 in the morning New York time. Delegates from every nation on Earth filled the assembly hall as the alien distress signal played through the speakers. The translated words echoed, "In the silence that followed, please help us. We are dying." Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the podium representing the United Colonial Defense Council. She was a woman in her 50s who had spent her career dealing with international crises, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Behind her, screens showed the countdown timer that had reached 58 hours remaining. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ambassador Carter began, 12 hours ago we learned that humanity is not alone in the universe. Today we must decide what kind of neighbors we choose to be." The Russian delegate raised his hand immediately. "How do we know this is not some elaborate deception? Perhaps these aliens are testing our military capabilities or trying to lure our ships into a trap." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Chinese representative stood next. "We have no information about either species mentioned in this transmission. For all we know, we could be interfering in a legitimate law enforcement action." Dr. Patricia Wong approached the microphone from the scientific advisory panel. She looked exhausted after working through the night to decode more of the alien language. "Our analysis shows genuine distress markers in the vocal patterns," she explained. "These are not the communications of beings trying to deceive us. They are the words of people who are dying." The British delegate asked the question everyone was thinking. "Even if we accept that this distress call is genuine, what can we possibly do? We have never sent humans beyond our own solar system. Our fastest ships would take centuries to reach them." Admiral Murphy stepped forward from the military advisory section. He was a man who had spent his career keeping secrets, but today those secrets might save lives. "We have experimental technology that could potentially reach their system in time," he said carefully. "But it has never been tested at such distances." The hall erupted in questions and arguments. Some delegates demanded to know why such technology had been kept secret. Others wanted technical specifications that Admiral Murphy could not provide in an open session. Through it all, the countdown timer continued its relentless march toward zero. President Ryan Foster of the United States requested permission to address the assembly. As the current rotating president of the Security Council, his words carried special weight. He was a younger man who had come to office promising a new era of international cooperation. 58 hours ago, every person on Earth believed we were alone in the universe, President Foster said. Today we know that somewhere among the stars people are dying. They sent a message into the darkness hoping someone would hear them. We heard them. The French delegate stood to object. President Foster, we cannot risk human lives and irreplaceable technology based on a single transmission from unknown aliens. We have responsibilities to our own people first. What message does it send to the galaxy if the first thing we do upon hearing a cry for help is calculate the risk to ourselves? Ambassador Carter asked. Every species we ever encounter will judge us by what we do in these next 2 days. Dr. Chun Liu entered the assembly hall carrying a tablet loaded with technical data about the Fold Drive project. He was a slight man with thick glasses who looked more comfortable in a laboratory than addressing world leaders. Admiral Murphy had summoned him from the classified research facility in Colorado. The Fold Drive technology works by creating a controlled spatial distortion, Dr. Liu explained to the assembly. We have successfully tested it within our solar system. But a jump of 15 light years is far beyond anything we have attempted. The German delegate asked for specifics. What are the risks, Doctor? Dr. Liu adjusted his glasses nervously. The drive could fail catastrophically, destroying any ship that attempts the jump. We could emerge from fold space inside a star or planet. The aliens could be hostile despite their distress call. We could lose our entire rescue fleet. And if we do nothing? Ambassador Carter asked. Then we will have learned that when innocent people call for help, humanity chooses to protect itself rather than protect others, Dr. Liu replied quietly. The debate continued for hours as the countdown timer reached 54 hours. Some delegates argued for sending a small unmanned probe first to gather intelligence. Others wanted to attempt communication with the aliens before committing to a rescue mission. A few suggested that humanity should focus on building defenses. In case the hostile aliens mentioned in the transmission decided to attack Earth next, the Indian delegate made a point that silenced the hall. If we had the power to help and chose not to act, how are we any different from the attackers these aliens are fleeing? Captain Alex Rodriguez had been waiting in a secure briefing room adjacent to the assembly hall. He was a veteran space pilot who had commanded deep space missions for the Colonial Defense Force. Admiral Murphy had selected him to lead the rescue mission if the United Nations approved it. Rodriguez was a calm man in his 40s, who had earned his reputation flying dangerous missions in the asteroid belt. His crew trusted him completely, and he had never lost a ship under his command. But this mission would be unlike anything any human had ever attempted. Captain Rodriguez, Ambassador Carter called him to address the assembly. If we authorize this mission, what would you need? Give me the experimental ship Defiance and her full drive, Rodriguez answered without hesitation. 300 crew members, including Marines, medics, engineers, and scientists. Everything we might need for any situation we encounter. And how long would you need to prepare? President Foster asked. We launch in 36 hours or we do not launch at all, Rodriguez replied. These aliens do not have time for us to debate preparations. The final vote came as the countdown reached 52 hours remaining. Delegate after delegate cast their votes on humanity's first response to alien contact. Some voted yes because they believed it was morally right. Others voted yes because they feared what history would say if they refused. A few voted no because they genuinely believed the risks were too great, but when the votes were counted, the result was unanimous. Every nation on Earth had agreed to authorize the rescue mission. Ambassador Carter looked at the countdown timer showing 51 hours and 37 minutes remaining. Captain Rodriguez, you are authorized to take the UCS Defiance and attempt to render aid to the alien species requesting assistance. May God go with you. Rodriguez saluted the assembly and turned to leave. He had less than 2 days to prepare for humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. As he walked toward the door, the alien voices continued to echo from the speakers. Please help us. We are dying. In 51 hours, they would have their answer. The UCS Defiance hung in space like a metallic cathedral, her experimental full-drive engines glowing with barely contained energy. Captain Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge watching Earth grow smaller in the viewscreen as his ship moved toward the jump point. In 12 hours, they would either make history or become part of it. 300 crew members worked frantically throughout the ship preparing for a mission that no human had ever attempted. In the engineering section, Danny Kim crawled through maintenance tunnels making last-minute adjustments to the full-drive systems. He was a young engineer who understood the experimental technology better than anyone except its creator. Captain, the drive is as ready as it will ever be, Danny reported over the communication system. But I have to tell you, we are pushing this thing way beyond its design limits. Dr. Liu built it for solar system hops, not 15 light-year jumps. Rodriguez acknowledged the report and moved to the science section where Dr. Amanda Foster was analyzing every piece of data they had about their destination. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying the possibility of alien life. Now she was about to meet it face to face. What do we know about these aliens, Doctor? Rodriguez asked. Dr. Foster pulled up holographic displays showing the analysis of the distress signals. We are calling them the Villani based on how they refer to themselves in the transmissions. They appear to be a peaceful species with technology, roughly equivalent to our own. The attackers they call the Krog Dominion seem to have superior weapons and ships. Navigation Officer Paul Gray interrupted from his station. Captain, we are receiving new transmissions from the target system. The situation is getting worse. The latest alien broadcasts painted a horrifying picture. The Krog forces were not just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying cities, farms, and anything that could support life. The Villani voices that came through the translators were becoming more desperate with each transmission. "They are burning our forests," one transmission said. "The Krog ships circle our worlds like vultures. We have tried to surrender, but they do not answer our calls. They just keep killing." Colonel Maria Santos reviewed the tactical situation from the Marine Command Center. She was a combat veteran who had led troops in asteroid mining conflicts. But this would be different. They were going into unknown space to fight an enemy they knew. Nothing about using weapons that might not even work against alien technology. "How many Krog ships are we looking at, Gray?" Santos asked. Paul Gray studied his sensor data carefully. Long-range scans show at least 12 large vessels in the target system. Each one is roughly twice the size of our ship. And there could be more that we cannot detect from this distance. Dr. Kevin Brooks joined the discussion from his position as head of the scientific team. He was an older man who specialized in rapid technology analysis. His job would be to figure out alien technology in the middle of a battle. "We have one advantage," Dr. Brooks said. "The Krog do not know we exist. They have never encountered human technology or tactics. That surprise might be worth more than superior numbers." The full drive engaged 18 hours after leaving Earth orbit. Reality twisted around the Defiance as space-time folded to bring distant stars within reach. Danny Kim watched his instruments with growing alarm as power fluctuations rippled through the experimental systems. "Captain, the drive is holding together, but just barely," Danny reported. "I am having to reroute power from life support to keep the fold space bubble stable." Rodriguez felt the ship shudder around him as Danny made dangerous modifications to keep them moving toward their destination. The young engineer was performing miracles with technology that had never been tested under these conditions. During the 18-hour journey, more Villani transmissions reached them through fold space. Dr. Amanda Foster worked around the clock to understand what they were learning about the alien species. The Villani had been peaceful for thousands of years. They had never developed major weapons because they had never needed them. "They are farmers and scientists," Dr. Foster explained to the senior staff. "They have beautiful cities and art that spans continents. The Krog showed up 6 months ago and started destroying everything without warning or demands." Combat medic Tyler Walsh studied the biological data they had gathered about the Villani. He was a Navy corpsman who had treated everything from asteroid mining accidents to deep space radiation poisoning. Now he was preparing to provide medical care to aliens whose biology he was learning about in real time. "Their blood chemistry is copper-based instead of iron-based," Tyler explained to his medical team. "But the basic structures are similar enough that our emergency procedures should work. I hope." As they approached the target system, the communications array picked up signals from the battle zone. The Krog were not just attacking, they were broadcasting their intentions on open channels. Dr. Brooks worked with the translation systems to understand what they were saying. "The Krog messages are not directed at the Villani," Dr. Brooks reported grimly. "They are broadcasting to other species across the galaxy. They are using this attack as a demonstration of power." Lieutenant Emma Clark ran final checks on the fighter squadrons that would provide air support during the rescue operation. She was a pilot who had earned her reputation flying dangerous missions in the outer planets. Her fighters were fast and maneuverable, but they had never been designed for combat against alien warships. "My birds are ready, Captain," Emma reported. "We have modified our weapons with some theoretical improvements that Dr. Brooks suggested. Whether they will work against alien shields is anyone's guess." Chief Mechanic Rick Stone had spent the journey studying captured Krog signals to understand their technology. He was a practical man who could fix anything and build weapons from spare parts. His workshop had become a laboratory for creating hybrid human-alien technology. "I think I have figured out how their power systems work," Rick told the engineering team. "If we can get close enough, we might be able to disrupt their shields using our full drive emissions." The countdown timer from the original distress signal reached 8 hours remaining when the Defiance dropped out of fold space at the edge of the Villani system. What they found there made everyone on the bridge fall silent. 3 beautiful blue-green worlds hung in space like jewels, but massive dark ships circled them like predators. Explosions flashed across the surfaces of the planets as Krog weapons pounded cities into dust. The aliens they had come to save were dying before their eyes. "Captain," Paul Gray reported quietly, "I count 15 Krog warships. Each one outguns US by a factor of 3. Rodriguez looked at his crew and saw determination rather than fear in their faces. These were humans who had crossed impossible distances to help strangers in trouble. The odds did not matter. "All stations, this is the captain," Rodriguez announced over the ship-wide communication system. "We came here to save lives. Those people down there are counting on us. We are not going home without them." The UCS Defiance turned toward the battle zone and accelerated to attack speed. The Krog warships detected the UCS Defiance the moment it entered the system, but they did not recognize it as a threat. The alien vessels continued their methodical bombardment of the Villani worlds while sending out scanner probes to examine this strange new ship. They had never seen anything like human technology. Captain Rodriguez split his forces across all 3 planets without hesitation. The Krog had superior numbers and firepower, but they were spread thin trying to destroy 3 worlds simultaneously. Rodriguez intended to use that against them. "Colonel Santos, take your Marines to Villani Prime," Rodriguez ordered. "Emma, your fighters will cover the evacuation transports. Danny, I need you to monitor the fold drive for any tactical advantages." The first transport shuttles launched toward the largest Villani city, even as Krog plasma bolts turned nearby. Buildings into molten slag. Colonel Maria Santos led the initial assault team through the smoking ruins of what had once been a beautiful metropolis. Villani civilians huddled in bombed-out buildings while Krog ground forces hunted them through the streets. The Villani were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and large eyes that showed their terror and confusion. They had never seen creatures like humans before, but when Santos and her Marines started fighting the Krog soldiers, the aliens understood immediately that help had arrived. Santos adapted her tactics on the fly as she learned about Krog weapons and armor. The alien soldiers were larger than humans and moved more slowly, but their energy weapons could punch through human body armor like paper. Her Marines learned to use the ruins for cover and strike fast before disappearing again. "Tyler, get your medical station set up in that temple," Santos radioed to combat medic Tyler Walsh. "We have wounded Villani civilians incoming." Tyler established his field hospital in a partially destroyed building that the Villani had been using as a shelter. He had never treated alien patients before, but the basic principles of trauma medicine seemed to apply. Stop the bleeding, stabilize the patient, and figure out the details later. The first Villani patient was a young female who had been caught in a Krog plasma blast. Her copper-based blood was a brilliant blue color, but Tyler could see that she was going into shock just like any human would. He started in 4-line with universal plasma and watched her vital signs stabilize. "Thank you," the Villani female whispered in accented but understandable English. She had learned human language from the transmissions during their journey. "We thought no one would come." Lieutenant Emma Clark dove her fighter squadron through a formation of Krog attack craft that were strafing a refugee column. The alien pilots were skilled, but they had never fought opponents who used human tactics. Emma's pilots flew in unpredictable patterns that confused the Krog targeting systems. "Break left and come around behind them," Emma ordered her wingman as she rolled her fighter through a gap between 2 Krog ships. Her modified weapons sparked against alien shields but did not penetrate. She would need to find another way to hurt them on the second planet. Chief Mechanic Rick Stone worked frantically in the ruins of a Villani factory to jury-rig human weapons with captured Krog power cores. A combination should not have worked, but Rick had spent his career making impossible repairs with whatever materials he could find. "If I can boost our plasma output by routing it through their power matrix," Rick muttered as he welded alien components to human weapons, "we might actually be able to punch through their shields." The first test of Rick's hybrid weapon came when a Krog patrol found his position. The modified human rifle fired a bolt of energy that tore through the alien soldier's armor like it was made of cloth. The Krog warrior fell with a look of complete surprise on his face. "All units, this is Stone," Rick broadcast on the tactical frequency. "I have figured out how to hurt these things. Bring me any Krog power cores you can salvage and I will upgrade your weapons." Dr. Kevin Brooks worked with a Villani scientist named Cathara to establish better communication protocols between the species. She was an elderly Villani researcher who had spent her life studying the stars, never expecting to meet beings from another world. "Your people fight like no one we have ever seen," Cathara told Dr. Brooks through the translation system. "The Krog have conquered dozens of species, but they have never faced anything like humans." Brooks learned that the Krog Dominion had been expanding across this region of space for decades. They would arrive at a system, demand surrender, and then destroy any species that resisted. No one had ever successfully fought them off before. "They always use the same tactics," Cathara explained. "Overwhelming force applied methodically until resistance collapses. But your people do not fight like that." Engineer Danny Kim made a discovery that changed everything. While monitoring the full drive systems, he noticed that the spatial distortions created by human technology interfered with Krog shield generators. The aliens had never encountered fold space technology and their defenses could not adapt to it. "Captain, if we can get close enough to the Krog ships, our full drive emissions will disrupt their shields," Danny reported excitedly. "They will be vulnerable to conventional weapons for maybe 30 seconds before they can compensate." Rodriguez immediately broadcast this information to all human forces. Within minutes, the tactical situation began to shift. Emma's fighters used micro-jumps to appear inside Krog shield perimeters and deliver devastating attacks before jumping away again. The alien pilots had no defense against opponents who could teleport. The ground battle turned when Santos learned to coordinate full drive disruptions with marine assaults. Her troops would call for a micro-jump, the Krog shields would fail, and human weapons would suddenly become deadly effective. The alien soldiers began to retreat for the first time in the campaign. Tyler's medical station became a symbol of hope for the Villani civilians. Word spread quickly that the strange aliens from another world would treat anyone who needed help. Soon, his field hospital was filled with wounded Villani who looked at humans with something approaching worship. They came across the void to save. "U.S.?" Tyler heard one Villani elder telling others. "These Deathworld beings heard our cry and crossed impossible distances because it was right." The tide of battle turned completely when Rick's weapon modifications reached critical mass. Every human unit was now equipped with hybrid technology that could penetrate Krog defenses. The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that adapted faster than they could respond. "All Krog vessels, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Human Rescue Fleet," Rodriguez broadcast on all frequencies. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or we will destroy you." The Krog commanders. Response came in broken English learned from intercepted transmissions. "You are few, we are many. You cannot defeat the Dominion." "Maybe not," Rodriguez replied calmly, "but we can defeat you." The human assault that followed was unlike anything the Krog had ever experienced. Ships that could teleport through space. Soldiers who charged into impossible odds without hesitation. Weapons that should not have been able to hurt them but somehow did. Most importantly, they faced beings who would rather die than abandon innocent people to slaughter. Half the Krog fleet was destroyed in the first hour of serious fighting. The survivors broadcast desperate calls for reinforcements, but help was too far away. They had expected to face farmers and scientists, not warriors from a death world, who treated impossible odds as merely challenging. The evacuation proceeded rapidly as Krog resistance collapsed. Transport shuttles carried millions of Villani civilians to safety while human forces held the escape routes open. By the time the last refugees were aboard, 7 Krog warships had been destroyed and the rest were retreating. 3 months after the battle, engineer Danny Kim stood in what had once been the ruins of New Kethera, the largest city on Villani Prime. Around him, construction crews worked to rebuild the metropolis using a combination of human engineering and Villani architecture. The result was something neither species could have created alone. The Krog fleet had retreated, after losing 8 of their 15 warships, but they had left behind a trail of destruction that would take years to fully repair. Danny worked alongside Villani engineers who treated him with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. They still could not quite believe that beings from another world had crossed the void to save them. "The power grid will be fully restored by next week," Danny reported to Captain Rodriguez during their daily briefing. "The Villani have some interesting ideas about energy distribution that we never considered. I think we might learn as much from them as they learn from us." Dr. Amanda Foster had established the first permanent interspecies research facility in the rebuilt Science District. She spent her days working with Villani biologists to understand how life had evolved differently on their worlds. The collaboration was producing discoveries that neither species could have made independently. "They have medical techniques that could revolutionize how we treat genetic disorders," Dr. Foster explained to the human team. "And our surgical procedures are helping them deal with trauma injuries that they never knew how to handle before." The Villani scientist Cathara had become humanity's closest alien friend and unofficial ambassador. She was an elderly researcher who spoke excellent English and served as a bridge between the two species. Through her, the humans learned about Villani culture, history, and the broader galactic community. "Your people are unlike any species we have encountered," Cathara told Captain Rodriguez, as they walked through the memorial garden that honored both human and Villani who had died in the battle. "Most civilizations become cautious as they grow older. Humans seem to become more willing to take risks for others." The memorial was a testament to the cost of the rescue mission. 23 humans had died saving the Villani worlds, along with 3 ships that had been destroyed in the fighting. But their sacrifice had saved over 2 million Villani civilians and sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Tyler Walsh continued to run the medical center that had grown from his battlefield hospital. Villani patients came to him not just for treatment, but for the reassurance that came from being cared for by one of the legendary humans who had saved their world. He had learned to treat 6 different alien species as word of human medical skills. "Spread. The strange thing is how grateful they are," Tyler told Dr. Foster during one of their medical conferences. "We just did what anyone should do when people are in trouble, but they act like we performed some kind of miracle." The first Galactic Council meeting took place on a neutral space station in the sector between human and Villani space. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the implications of humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage. Captain Rodriguez attended as Earth's first official interstellar ambassador. The council chamber buzzed with dozens of different languages as aliens who had never worked together tried to understand what humanity's actions meant for the future. Some species were curious about human technology. Others wanted to establish trade relationships. A few seemed genuinely afraid of what humans might do next. Villani Ambassador Tereth spoke first to the assembled delegates. She was a dignified female who had been chosen to represent her people because of her experience working with humans during the Reconstruction. Her words carried weight because the Villani were respected throughout the region as peaceful scholars. "When we sent our distress call into the darkness, we hoped that someone might hear us," Tereth said to the council. "We never imagined that anyone would come. But these humans heard strangers crying for help and crossed impossible distances to save us. Not for conquest, not for resources, not for territory, because it was the right thing to do." The reaction from other species was mixed. The Zephyrian delegate expressed admiration for human courage, but worried about their apparent disregard for personal safety. The Crystalline Collective wanted to study human full-drive technology. The Merchant Guild saw opportunities for profitable trade, relationships, but the most important message came from an unexpected source. A Krog diplomatic vessel had requested permission to address the council, and their representative delivered words that no one had expected to hear from the aggressive empire. "The humans are dangerous," the Krog ambassador announced to the stunned assembly. "They fight without regard for odds or casualties when they believe justice is at stake. They cannot be reasoned with when innocent lives are threatened. They turn inferior technology into superior weapons through sheer determination. Do not provoke them. The Krog withdrawal from the Villani sector had been total and permanent. For the first time in decades, the aggressive empire had encountered beings who fought harder than they did, and they wanted no part of a prolonged conflict with humanity. Other expansionist species took note of this development. Chief Mechanic Rick Stone had become something of a legend among both humans and aliens for his ability to combine technologies that should never have worked together. His workshop on Villani Prime was visited by engineers from across the galaxy who wanted to understand how humans approach technical problems. The secret is not being afraid to try something that might not work, Rick explained to a group of alien engineers who were studying his hybrid weapon designs. Most species seem to perfect one technology and then stick with it forever. Humans just keep changing things until they find something better. Dr. Kevin Brooks received a priority transmission from Admiral Murphy on Earth that changed everything. The deep space monitoring stations had detected 17 different alien species trying to contact humanity. Some offered trade agreements. Some wanted to establish embassies. Some offered to share scientific knowledge, but 3 new distress signals had also been received. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UCS Defiance as his crew prepared for another fold space jump. The ship had been upgraded with hybrid human Villani technology that made her faster and more capable than before. His crew was a mixture of humans and Villani volunteers who wanted to help with future rescue missions. Navigation, set course for the Epsilon sector, Rodriguez ordered. We have people in trouble. Lieutenant Emma Clark smiled as she ran pre-flight checks on her fighters. The pilots under her command now included both humans and aliens who had learned to work together during combat training. The mixed crews were proving even more effective than pure human squadrons. Just like old times, Captain, Emma reported. Except now we have friends watching our backs. The new distress signal came from a species called the Mothcar who were facing extinction from a stellar plague that was killing their sun. They had heard about the humans who saved the Villani and were begging for help with a problem that seemed impossible to solve. Colonel Santos reviewed the tactical situation with her mixed marine units. Human soldiers worked alongside Villani specialists, and even a few former Krog warriors who had defected after witnessing human courage in battle. The combination of different fighting styles was creating new tactical possibilities. Looks like we are in the hero business now, Santos told her troops as they prepared for deployment. Let's go show the galaxy what happens when good people work together. The UCS Defiance folded space toward another impossible mission, carrying the same message they had always carried. When someone calls for help, humans come running. And now they were not running alone. Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the endless stream of data flowing across his monitor screens. 3 years of working the night shift at Deep Space Station, Omega-7 had taught him to recognize the difference between cosmic background noise and actual signals, but tonight something felt different. The monitoring station floated in the empty void between Earth and Proxima Centauri, its powerful senses sweeping the galaxy for any sign of intelligent life or potential threats. To humanity. At 28 years old, Jake had spent most of his adult life listening to the silence of space. His job as communications specialist was mostly routine maintenance of automated systems and filing reports that nobody on Earth ever seemed to read. The United Earth Defense Force had built 12 monitoring stations like Omega-7 after humanity developed faster-than-light travel, hoping to get early warning of any alien contact. So far, all they had detected was the occasional pulsar or dying star. The signal first appeared as a tiny blip on his secondary screen at exactly 0347 hours. Jake almost dismissed it as interference from the nearby nebula, but something about the pattern made him pause. The signal repeated every 47 seconds with mathematical precision, far too regular to be natural. He leaned forward and began recording the transmission, his heart rate picking up as he realized what he might be looking at. Dr. Lisa Carter was sleeping in her quarters when Jake's urgent message woke her up. As the station's only xenolinguistics? expert, she had volunteered for this assignment hoping to be the first human to decode an alien message. Most of her colleagues thought she was wasting her career on a fantasy, but Lisa believed that contact was inevitable. She stumbled through the dark corridors to the communications center, still wearing her pajamas and fuzzy slippers. "Show me what you found," she said, settling into the chair next to Jake's workstation. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. It contained complex mathematical sequences, star charts showing local stellar positions, and what appeared to be some kind of linguistic pattern. Lisa's training kicked in as she began analyzing the structure of the transmission. The mathematical sequences were simple at first: prime numbers, basic geometry, and universal constants that any intelligent species would recognize, but embedded. Within these patterns were more complex elements that seemed to be trying to establish a communication protocol. Lisa worked for 6 hours straight, her excitement growing as she began to understand the message's structure. Captain Roy Bennett arrived at the communication center just as Lisa made her breakthrough. The station commander was a 45-year-old veteran who had seen action in the Mars colonial wars, and his weathered face showed skepticism as he reviewed their findings. Bennett had commanded Omega-7 for 2 years without detecting so much as a space bug, and he was naturally suspicious of anything that seemed too good to be true. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said, her voice shaking with excitement. She had managed to decode the first portion of the message, and what she found made her stomach clench with fear and anger. The transmission was indeed from an alien species, but it was not a greeting or peaceful first contact. It was a desperate cry for help. The aliens called themselves the Villani, and their message painted a picture of unimaginable horror. For 3 years, their homeworld had been under attack by something called the Hegemony, a coalition of advanced alien species that conquered and enslaved other races across the galaxy. The Villani had fought bravely, but their technology was no match for their attackers. Their cities were burning, their people were being captured and taken away, and their military was down to a handful of ships and ground forces. Lisa continued translating as Jake and Captain Bennett watched in stunned silence. The Villani described orbital bombardments that turned their forests to ash and weapons that could level entire city blocks. They spoke of watching their children being loaded onto transport ships bound for slave camps on distant worlds. The message contained detailed star charts showing the location of their homeworld, and tactical information about hegemony forces, as if the Villani hoped that whoever received their transmission might be able to help. The most heartbreaking part of the message came near the end. The Villani admitted that they were probably going to lose their war. Their transmission was being sent on multiple frequencies to every corner of the galaxy, hoping that somewhere out there was a species that still remembered what it meant to stand against darkness. They were not asking for salvation. They simply wanted someone to know that they had existed, that they had fought, and that they had refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. "If there is anyone out there who remembers what it means to stand against tyranny," the message concluded, "please help us. We do not ask you to die for us, only to remember us when we are gone. Tell the galaxy that the Villani chose to fight rather than kneel. Tell them that we believe freedom was worth any price, even if we could not pay it ourselves." Captain Bennett stared at the decoded message for a long time without speaking. His military training told him to report this to Earth Command immediately, and let the politicians decide what to do. But something about the Villani's words reminded him of his grandfather's stories about the Second World War, when ordinary people had to choose between safety and doing what was right. The captain had joined the military to protect humanity, but he had never imagined that protecting humanity might mean protecting other species as well. Jake Morrison found himself thinking about his younger sister back on Earth, safe in her college dormitory and worried about nothing more serious than final exams. What would happen to her if the hegemony discovered humanity and decided that Earth looked like a good target for conquest? What would happen to all the children on all the worlds if nobody ever stood up to these monsters? Dr. Lisa Carter was already composing her report to Earth Command, her hands shaking as she typed. She knew that what happened next would determine not just the fate of an alien species she had never met, but the kind of people humanity would prove to be when tested. The Villani had sent their message into the void hoping that someone, somewhere, still believed in justice. Now humanity would have to decide if they were right. The transmission from the Villani continued repeating its desperate plea as the three humans sat in the communications center, each lost in their own thoughts about what this moment meant. Outside the station's windows, the stars looked the same as they always had, but somehow the universe felt smaller and more dangerous than it had just a few hours ago.